Long before the hum of electric lights, the bustle of highways, or the endless chatter of modern cities, there existed a world shaped by slow rhythms and ancient certainties. Imagine stepping into a place where days are measured not by clocks but by the rising and setting of the sun, where seasons hold sway over life's every detail, and where every person's existence is bound tightly to the land they inhabit. This was medieval Europe, a world defined by its contrasts. It was at once harsh and beautiful, cruel and filled with quiet wonders. In those centuries, life was a fragile balance. Winter was not simply cold, it was a season that could strip away survival itself. Fields lay bare, rivers froze under heavy frost, and communities huddled together in cottages made of wood and stone, breathing clouds of smoke from peat fires. In spring, there was a slow revival, the thawing of the earth, the scent of budding flowers, the stir of activity in villages as preparations began for planting and harvest. This cycle shaped existence, teaching patience as much as endurance. But it was not only the seasons that shaped medieval life. Society itself was tightly woven into a structure both rigid and divine. Kings and queens reigned, their crowns symbols of power ordained by God. Below them, nobles held lands, commanding loyalty and service in return for protection. And at the bottom, the vast majority, peasants, craftsmen, and laborers, lived lives of relentless toil, bound to their lord's land, dependent on the harvest, and at the mercy of nature and politics. Life was hard, predictable, and often unforgiving. For most people, the world was defined by necessity. Every day began before dawn. Men labored in fields or workshops, women tended to hearth and home, and children learned the skills of their parents. Knowledge was practical: how to mend a tool, how to till soil, how to bake bread. Books were rare treasures, and most learning came from spoken word and tradition. Religion, too, shaped the heartbeat of this world. The church was not merely a place of worship but the very center of life. Its bells marked the hours. Its teachings guided morality. Its festivals gave shape to the year. Life moved within a framework of prayer and devotion, where the divine and the earthly were inseparable. Every event, a birth, a harvest, a death, was observed with rituals that tied humanity to something larger than itself. Yet within this ordered, disciplined life, there lingered a longing for release. The days of work, bound by duty and the heavy weight of survival, were long and unchanging. The world was governed by rules, social, religious, and seasonal, and opportunities to break free were rare. For ordinary people, life was often a quiet repetition: work, rest, prayer, sleep, and work again. This repetition could breed endurance but also a deep yearning for moments of escape. It is in this context that something remarkable began to emerge: strange bursts of joy and chaos, sanctioned moments of inversion where the world turned upside down. These were not mere entertainments, they were profound expressions of human need. For in a world ruled by order, people sought the beauty of disorder, a space where laughter replaced ritual, parody replaced reverence, and the ordinary became extraordinary. Before there were bustling theaters, cinemas, or festivals that could capture the imagination of millions, there were celebrations unlike anything the modern world could imagine. In the heart of medieval towns and villages, these festivals became a secret language of defiance and delight. They were moments when society loosened its strict grip, allowing a collective breath of freedom. These festivals were often chaotic, absurd, and even shocking to the modern ear. Events where peasants could mock the powerful, the sacred could be turned profane, and the world of everyday rules could dissolve entirely. One of the most astonishing examples of such festivals was the Festival of Fools. Unlike anything before or after, it was a tradition where normal life was inverted. Priests would be parodied, sacred ceremonies transformed into comedies, and the solemnity of the church replaced with laughter and noise. It was a day when the boundaries of rank and ritual were intentionally blurred, when masks and mockeries allowed people to step out of their own identities. But before we delve into this strange festival, we must first step fully into the world that made such a thing possible. Medieval Europe was a world defined by contrasts: piety and parody, suffering and celebration, order and chaos. Understanding this world is essential before we can truly grasp the wonder of the bizarre traditions that blossomed within it. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the medieval street. Cobblestones slick with morning dew. Thatched roofs huddled close together. The smell of bread baking drifting through narrow alleys. Children chasing chickens. A town crier shouting news of distant wars. The sound of hammers from a blacksmith's forge. Bells ringing from the church tower, calling the faithful to prayer. This was life in its raw texture, simple yet vivid, repetitive yet rich in small moments of beauty. It was a life both hard and intimate, ruled by a slow rhythm that modern civilization has long forgotten. And yet, within this world of order and routine, seeds of something extraordinary were growing. Festivals of misrule, sacred parodies, and strange celebrations emerged, as if humanity itself was seeking a way to remind itself that life was not only to be endured, but to be lived. In the chapters ahead, we will step deeper into this world, tracing the birth of the bizarre, the sacred rebellions, and the rituals that both delighted and disturbed. We will enter the Festival of Fools, a living paradox, where chaos was not destruction, but a kind of fragile harmony. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, let your mind carry you across centuries, into a world before ours, where laughter and madness were as vital as bread and prayer. Let us begin this journey together. The roots of the bizarre festivals of the Middle Ages stretch far deeper than a single century or culture. They were born from centuries of blending, a mingling of pagan rituals, Roman spectacles, folk traditions, and Christian ceremony. This fusion created something unique, a living tradition that seemed strange to both its participants and its critics. To understand why these celebrations existed, we must look back at how human culture had been shaped long before the Festival of Fools came into being. Long before medieval Europe wore its rigid armor of kings, churches, and feudal orders, communities had marked the passage of time with seasonal festivals. Ancient peoples celebrated cycles of nature, planting, harvest, solstice, and equinox, as moments of communion with the earth. These festivals were not merely joyous occasions but essential rituals, connecting human life to the rhythms of the natural world. Offerings were made, masks worn, dances performed to honor the invisible forces believed to govern life. When the Roman Empire spread across Europe, it brought with it its own traditions of spectacle. Festivals like Saturnalia, a holiday in late December, were marked by role reversals, mock kings, feasting, and revelry. During Saturnalia, slaves might be served by their masters, social hierarchies loosened, and mockery of authority allowed without consequence. This was not merely entertainment but a ritualized inversion, a time when the normal order of things was deliberately upended. These Roman traditions did not disappear with the fall of the empire, they lingered in memory, in customs, in the quiet persistence of human celebration. Into this landscape stepped Christianity, a new order that sought to sanctify time and ritual. The Church adapted certain festivals to its own calendar, aligning sacred days with older traditions. Many pagan celebrations were transformed, not erased, given new meaning under Christian theology. Thus, ancient feasts of light and renewal became festivals of saints and holy days. But even within this transformation, something of the old spirit remained, the desire for joy, for reversal, for moments when the ordinary world could be set aside. The medieval calendar became a tapestry of solemn observances and bursts of celebration. Sundays and holy days provided breaks from labor. Saints' feast days brought towns together in processions, music, and food. And then there were the festivals that seemed to carry within them a secret, an invitation to disorder. They were moments when the world of hierarchy could be mocked without punishment, when the sacred could be parodied in ways both shocking and liberating. It was in this fertile ground of layered tradition that strange festivals began to flourish. Across Europe, from France to England, Germany to Italy, there were celebrations that blended solemnity with absurdity. These were not accidental entertainments, they were living expressions of a deep human need. They offered a space where laughter could replace solemnity, where mockery could become ritual, and where the normal rules of life could be suspended, if only for a day. The birth of these festivals was not a single event but a slow evolution. In village squares, local traditions mixed with imported rituals. In cathedrals, clergy sometimes permitted days of parody as a form of spiritual release. In towns and courts, masked processions and theatrical performances became occasions of both celebration and subtle protest. The result was a complex tradition, part religion, part theatre, part rebellion. By the later Middle Ages, this tradition had matured into something remarkable: festivals where the boundaries between sacred and profane, master and servant, seriousness and jest were deliberately blurred. Among the most famous of these was the Festival of Fools, which would eventually captivate not only the streets of Paris but also towns across Europe. Its origins lay not in a single decree but in centuries of cultural blending, in the layering of ancient rites, Roman satire, Christian solemnity, and the living spirit of the people. What made these celebrations so powerful was their ability to speak to the human heart. They were not merely spectacles to be observed, they were experiences to be lived. They allowed people to step out of their roles, to escape the weight of authority, to imagine a different world, even if only for a moment. This was the hidden power of ritual inversion, the ability to transform a society, if briefly, into something both chaotic and beautiful. But such celebrations did not arise without tension. They existed in a delicate balance between joy and fear, laughter and danger. For in mocking authority, they risked crossing a line. In parodying the sacred, they challenged beliefs. And so, their existence was always precarious, dependent on the tolerance of rulers and the understanding of the church. These festivals were not chaos without limits. They were controlled chaos, a temporary suspension of order that allowed society to reaffirm itself once the day was over. By understanding the birth of these strange celebrations, we glimpse not only the origins of the Festival of Fools but also something deeper about human nature. They remind us that even in the most ordered societies, there is a yearning for reversal, a need to laugh, to mock, and to imagine another world. It is this need that gave birth to the strange, the absurd, and the extraordinary traditions that will carry us forward into the heart of our story. As night deepens and your mind grows quieter, imagine the world of the Middle Ages as it stood on the edge of transformation. Picture villages where pagan dances once marked the solstice, where Roman laughter still lingered in the air, and where the church's bell rang over both prayer and parody. In such a world, the Festival of Fools would arise, not as an accident, but as the inevitable flowering of centuries of tradition. And so we step closer to that day, to the heart of medieval misrule, to a celebration that would confound the faithful and delight the bold. Let us continue our journey, for we are about to enter a world where the rules are reversed, where laughter becomes ritual, and where the boundaries of reality itself seem to dissolve. Amid the tapestry of strange medieval celebrations, none was more remarkable, or more bewildering, than the Festival of Fools. To imagine it is to step into a world where sacred tradition is turned on its head, where solemn ceremony becomes playful mockery, and where the boundaries between reality and parody dissolve. The Festival of Fools was not merely a spectacle, it was a living performance of reversal, a ritual in which the world itself seemed to invert. Its origins are rooted deep in medieval life, arising from centuries of custom, adaptation, and human whimsy. By the late Middle Ages, the festival had become a central tradition in many towns across Europe, particularly in France. It was most famously celebrated in Paris, where on the Feast of the Circumcision, January 1st, the streets filled with laughter, song, and a kind of controlled chaos unlike anything else in the medieval calendar. But before it became a known festival, its roots were sown in smaller, local customs, days of misrule in villages, playful mockeries in cathedrals, and centuries-old traditions of carnival inversion. The Festival of Fools was a day unlike any other. Imagine the cathedral, a place of solemn prayer and order, transformed into a stage of parody. Priests might wear masks, bishops might be mocked by their own choir bars, and sacred rituals could become absurd pageantry. One of the most famous traditions involved the election of a Lord of Misrule, a mock bishop or pope chosen to preside over the day. This figure, often a lowly clerk or a simple choir boy, would don the robes of authority and lead the congregation in a ceremony of deliberate absurdity. During the festival, normal order was suspended. Social ranks were blurred as peasants paraded in the robes of nobles and clerics dressed as fools. The sacred space of the church became a theatre for laughter and parody. Hymns were sung in jest, prayers inverted, and solemn rituals turned into comic performances. The very language of worship was transformed, as parody became both a form of devotion and a form of rebellion. It was a world where the sacred and the profane coexisted in curious harmony. On one level, the Festival of Fools was irreverent, an uproar of laughter and mockery that seemed to challenge the very authority of the church. Yet, on another level, it was deeply ritualistic, a ceremony that affirmed the power of tradition by allowing it to be playfully questioned. The mockery was not destruction but a kind of renewal, a way to remind the faithful of the fragility of order and the necessity of joy. The festival was marked by striking rituals. Donkeys might be brought into the church to be blessed, symbolizing the foolishness of the day and the humility of humanity. Choirs could be given authority to conduct services. Processions would wind through the streets, filled with music, laughter, and grotesque costumes. The air was filled with singing, shouting, and the sound of drums and bells. The city became a living stage, and its people the actors in a grand performance of inversion. This was not chaos without meaning. Every absurd act of the Festival of Fools carried symbolism. The inversion of roles reminded people that all human hierarchies are fragile. The parody of sacred rituals invited reflection on the mystery of worship. The laughter that echoed through the streets was not just merriment, it was a subtle, unspoken meditation on the limits of seriousness and the value of release. The Festival of Fools was also a deeply communal experience. It was not confined to the clergy or the nobility, it belonged to everyone. In towns and villages, the festival became a moment of shared joy, where the boundaries of class and rank could be forgotten. Peasants, merchants, priests, and nobles participated in a collective ritual that blurred distinctions and united the community in laughter. This collective nature was part of its power. For one day, the ordinary rules of life, rules of rank, duty, and decorum, were suspended, replaced by a joyful equality born of parody. Yet, the festival was not free from danger. Its very nature, mockery of authority, parody of the sacred, meant that it constantly walked a fine line. Church authorities tolerated the Festival of Fools only because it was controlled, confined to specific times and places. Beyond those boundaries, such irreverence could be seen as heresy, an offense punishable by silence or worse. The festival existed in a balance between permission and risk, a fragile accord between laughter and order. What made the Festival of Fools remarkable was its endurance. 4 centuries it survived, adapting and evolving in towns across Europe. It was celebrated not only in France but in England, Spain, Germany, and beyond. Each region added its own variations, blending the core spirit of inversion with local traditions. In some places, it became a day of theatrical plays. In others, it involved elaborate processions of masked fools, mock trials, or bizarre contests of wit. The festival was a living tradition, shaped by the people who took part in it. It was not written in stone or decreed from above, it was carried in the laughter of townsfolk, in the imagination of priests willing to allow parody, and in the memory of generations who longed for a day of reversal. For all its strangeness, the Festival of Fools was, in its own way, an expression of the human need for freedom. It was a moment when the world could step aside, when the weight of hierarchy could be lifted, and when joy could be declared a sacred act. As we look back across the centuries, it is easy to dismiss the Festival of Fools as nothing more than curious folly. Yet to do so would be to overlook its deeper meaning. This was a ritual born of history, a celebration that embodied the contradictions of medieval life, the tension between order and chaos, devotion and mockery, the sacred and the profane. It was, in its own strange way, a festival of humanity itself. Tonight, as your mind grows quiet and your thoughts drift, imagine yourself standing in the heart of this festival. The bells of the cathedral ringing in mockery. Choirs leading a procession in jesters' robes. Peasants laughing as they parade through the streets in imitation of kings. The air thick with music, mischief, and a kind of sacred disorder. This is not simply a story of the past, it is a glimpse into a world where tradition became theater, where seriousness gave way to laughter, and where the impossible became real. In the chapters ahead, we will follow this festival deeper, exploring the rituals that defined it, the meaning behind its madness, and the way it both delighted and disturbed the medieval world. The Festival of Fools is a story of inversion, of release, of human imagination, and it is a story that will carry us toward the heart of something extraordinary. The Festival of Fools was not simply a celebration, it was a day unlike any other, a deliberate turning of the world inside out. It was a ritualized rebellion, a temporary release of the strictures of daily life, where solemn order was replaced by joyous chaos. To understand its power, we must imagine it not as mere entertainment, but as a sacred moment of reversal, a day where laughter became prayer, parody became ritual, and disorder became harmony. On this day, the world of the cathedral transformed completely. The air, usually hushed with reverence, rang instead with laughter, mockery, and song. Sacred hymns were replaced by absurd chants. Processions that once marked solemn religious observances became parodies, led by the mock bishops and clergy of the festival. Choir boys, dressed in the robes of their elders, would carry the voices of the congregation in laughter rather than prayer. Even the structure of the service could be inverted, prayers were turned backward, sacred readings replaced with comic recitals. One of the most striking traditions of the Festival of Fools was the ceremony of the Lord of Misrule. This figure, chosen by the people or the clerics themselves, was given authority for the day. Often a low-ranking clerk or a choir boy, he was crowned with a cap of fools and given robes of mock dignity. His task was to preside over the day's revels, to lead processions, give absurd sermons, and officiate ceremonies with deliberate absurdity. It was a symbolic inversion of the normal order, where the lowly could command and the solemn could be mocked. The streets themselves became part of the spectacle. Villages and towns filled with people in grotesque costumes and masks. Peasants dressed as nobles, jesters dressed as priests, women wearing men's garments. The disguises were not merely playful, they were a kind of secret language, a way to dissolve the rigid boundaries of medieval society. For one day, masks allowed people to escape their assigned roles and step into the roles of others. Hierarchy was reversed, authority mocked, and normal life set aside. The rituals of the day were both absurd and deeply symbolic. Donkeys might be led into the church to be blessed, a gesture that combined humor with humility. Parodies of sacred rites were performed, reminding people that the solemn and the profane often walked hand in hand. The laughter that rang through the streets was not merely noise, it was a kind of collective prayer, a release of pent-up tension, and a reminder of the human need for joy. Food, drink, and music were central to the celebration. Markets overflowed with sweets, pies, and spiced wine. Streets echoed with the sounds of flutes, drums, and laughter. Feasts became communal experiences, where the divisions between lord and peasant seemed to melt away. The celebration was not just a spectacle to observe, it was something to be lived, a sensory immersion that bound communities together in a shared moment of release. The idea of sacred rebellion was at the heart of the festival. It was not chaos for its own sake, but a controlled inversion of order, a way of renewing life itself. For a single day, the world was allowed to let go of its rigid structures. Hierarchies were mocked, rituals were parodied, and laughter became a kind of sacred act. This was the power of misrule, a temporary space where the normal became extraordinary, and where the human spirit could breathe free. Yet the festival was not without its deeper purpose. Beneath the humor and absurdity lay a reflection on the nature of authority and belief. The parodies and reversals were, in a way, a form of teaching, a reminder that all human structures are fragile, that life cannot be taken entirely seriously, and that laughter is a necessary part of the human experience. It was a sacred lesson wrapped in jest, a way of reminding the faithful that joy could be an offering to the divine. The day moved with its own rhythm, a slow unfolding of ceremony and celebration. Morning might begin with the election of the Lord of Misrule, followed by processions and mock services. The middle of the day would be filled with feasts, games, and performances. As evening approached, the laughter would take on a quieter, almost reflective tone, as if the day itself knew it was coming to an end. By nightfall, the revelry would fade, and the world would slip back into its ordinary order. The contrast was part of the meaning. The Festival of Fools was powerful because it was temporary. Its suspension of order only worked because it was limited. If chaos were constant, it would lose its meaning. But when it was granted for one day, it became something extraordinary, a living reminder that life itself is balanced between discipline and release. For those who lived it, the day was a memory to carry forward. In the quiet days that followed, the laughter of the festival lingered, a quiet echo beneath the regular rhythms of life. It became a kind of shared dream, a reminder that even in the strictest order there was room for wonder, absurdity, and joy. To witness the Festival of Fools was to step into a world where the rules of life could be questioned without danger, where parody became ritual, and where laughter became a form of communion. It was a celebration not only of misrule but of humanity itself, a day when joy was declared a sacred act, and the ordinary world became something magical. As you listen now, let your mind drift into that moment. Imagine yourself standing among the crowd, surrounded by music and laughter. Hear the bells ringing in mockery, see the choirs dressed as fools, smell the scents of bread and wine drifting through the air. Feel the thrill of inversion, the quiet wonder of being part of something both strange and sacred. This is the heart of the Festival of Fools, a day of sacred rebellion, a moment when the world was turned upside down and the human spirit was set free. In the next section, we will explore why the Church tolerated such strange chaos, and what this says about the deeper purpose of the festival. For behind the laughter lay a subtle balance between license and control, between joy and the preservation of order. The story of the Festival of Fools continues. The Festival of Fools, with all its laughter and inversion, existed in a curious tension with the authority of the medieval Church. To the modern ear, it may seem a contradiction. How could an institution built on order, reverence, and discipline allow a day of parody and chaos within its own sacred walls? Yet the answer lies deep within the paradox of human society and the subtle wisdom of tradition. The Church tolerated, and even embraced, this ritual of disorder because it served a greater purpose. For centuries, the Church had been the central pillar of medieval life. It governed morality, defined truth, and shaped the rhythms of daily existence. Its authority rested on order, order in worship, order in belief, order in society. Yet even the most ordered systems recognize the need for release. Just as the body must rest after labor, so too must the spirit find moments of liberation. The Church understood this, that the human heart requires not only discipline, but also joy, laughter, and the occasional overturning of routine. The Festival of Fools was a controlled chaos. It was not rebellion without bounds, but a ritualized suspension of rules, granted within strict limits. Its timing was fixed, its scope contained. It existed for a day, marked in the Church calendar, and no more. In this way, the Church could allow laughter without losing authority. The festival became a kind of safety valve for society, a space where frustrations could be released, social tensions dissolved, and order reaffirmed once the day was over. There was also a symbolic logic to tolerating such misrule. The festival was an acknowledgement of the mystery of life itself. By allowing the inversion of roles, the Church recognized a deeper truth, that life is not purely solemn, that humanity is bound up with joy and folly. The laughter of the festival was not disrespect but a form of ritual humility, a way of admitting that no human order is perfect, that all structures can be questioned. In this sense, the madness of the festival was a mirror held up to the faithful, reflecting both human weakness and divine grace. The Lord of Misrule, the mock bishop who presided over the festival, was in itself a theological statement. His role was to embody reversal, to preside over chaos with solemnity. Yet his power was granted by the Church. In this paradox lay the festival's deeper meaning. The Church sanctioned the laughter, not in defiance of faith, but as part of it. It was a reminder that joy and reverence are not opposites, but partners in the human experience. This tolerance also had practical value. Medieval society was structured around hierarchy and discipline, and the Church was a central enforcer of that structure. But rigid order can breed unrest. For the common people, life was full of hardship, long hours of labor, strict rules of behavior, and little opportunity for pleasure. The Festival of Fools offered a release valve, a day when those burdens could be set aside. It was a social mechanism, a way to preserve stability by allowing a controlled moment of subversion. In laughter, the tensions of everyday life could be eased. The festival also reinforced the Church's place at the heart of the community. By presiding over the day of misrule, the clergy reminded the people that even inversion and parody came under divine sanction. The laughter and mockery were not outside the Church's authority, they were woven into it. In permitting the festival, the Church transformed it into a ritual that both celebrated and contained chaos. It became a way of saying, joy has a place in faith, but only within the boundaries of divine order. There were critics, of course. Not every member of the church supported such celebrations. Some viewed the festival as irreverence, even blasphemy. Reformers occasionally denounced it, calling for its suppression. But these voices were balanced by others who saw value in tradition, recognizing that the festival met a deep human need. This delicate balance between license and restraint was part of what allowed the Festival of Fools to endure for centuries. It is important to understand that the Church's tolerance was not a sign of weakness, but a form of wisdom. By allowing moments of misrule, the Church preserved the strength of its own order. It acknowledged that life requires a balance between discipline and release, seriousness and laughter. In doing so, it transformed the festival into something far more than a day of folly. It became a ritual that deepened the spiritual life of the community. For those who took part, this day of sacred madness was a profound experience. It was not merely about laughter or spectacle, it was about entering a space where normal rules no longer applied. It was a reminder that beneath the weight of authority, beneath the structure of daily life, there was room for joy. This joy was not accidental, it was sanctioned, shaped, and framed by tradition. The Church gave permission for this reversal, recognizing that such moments were essential to the human spirit. The tolerance of the Church allowed the Festival of Fools to become more than a passing amusement. It became a tradition woven into the fabric of medieval life, a ceremony that united people across ranks and regions. For a day, the boundaries between sacred and profane, high and low, order and chaos were dissolved. And in that dissolution, something beautiful was born. A shared moment of humanity that transcended everyday life. As you listen now, imagine the cathedral on that morning, filled with a quiet awareness of what is to come. The ordinary solemnity of worship replaced with anticipation. Choir bows rehearsing their mock chants. Townsfolk gathering in anticipation. Somewhere, a simple clerk prepares to be crowned Lord of Misrule. This is a moment of paradox, where the Church itself allows for laughter and disorder. It is a lesson both ancient and timeless, that the human soul needs not only guidance but also release, not only discipline but also joy. In the next section, we will move deeper into the human side of this strange tradition. We will explore how the festival became a true escape for the people, a moment of shared laughter, community, and freedom in a world otherwise ruled by duty and hierarchy. The story of the Festival of Fools is far from complete, and its meaning is waiting to unfold. For the ordinary people of the Middle Ages, life was a rhythm of labor, obligation, and quiet endurance. The day began before dawn, often with the call of a bell or the crack of a wooden yoke. Fields had to be tilled, animals tended, bread baked, and tools mended. There was little time for rest, and even less for laughter. Life was bound by duty, and duty was bound by necessity. Yet, once a year, the Festival of Fools offered a rare, almost sacred, escape from that unending cycle. This was not merely a day of spectacle for the people, it was a day of transformation. For hours or even the better part of a day, the structures of medieval life could be set aside. The rigid hierarchies of master and servant, lord and peasant, cleric and layman, were reversed or dissolved entirely. Masks and costumes allowed people to slip into roles they could never inhabit in ordinary life. A peasant might become a mock bishop, a child might wear the robes of a priest, a jester might lead the procession through the town square. It was a world turned upside down, and it belonged to everyone. The beauty of the festival lay in its shared nature. It was not confined to a single class or a small group. Everyone participated, nobility and commoner alike. In town squares, the air was filled with music, laughter, and the sound of feet moving to the rhythm of drums. Street corners became stages for performances, as people told jokes, sang songs, and enacted comedies both bawdy and absurd. The disguises, masks, and costumes transformed not just individuals but entire communities. For one day, life became a collective play, a shared dream of freedom. This was not a mindless escape. Beneath the laughter was a deep human longing, for release, for equality, for a moment when the burdens of life could be laid down. In medieval society, where rank and duty shaped every interaction, the ability to mock authority and invert roles was a powerful relief. It allowed people to breathe in the possibility of another world, however briefly. For one day, the rules of life could be questioned, and the imagination could be set free. The festival became a living stage for this transformation. Streets became theater. Churches became arenas for parody. Markets became places of joyous chaos. The entire town became a participant in a performance of reversal. Music and song filled the air, mingled with laughter and the occasional cry of surprise. Processions wound through narrow lanes, with choirs in mock vestments, fools riding donkeys, and jesters leading the way. The city was alive in a way that was rare in the ordinary days of toil. This collective escape was also an expression of solidarity. In a society divided by class and bound by rigid hierarchies, the festival was a moment of shared experience. Nobles and peasants could laugh side by side. Clerics could be mocked without consequence. Authority could be parodied without rebellion. It was a space where the community came together, not in obedience, but in joyful communion. Laughter became a language that transcended rank, a language of human connection. Food and drink were part of this liberation. Market stalls overflowed with pies, sweetmeats, spiced wine, and other indulgences. Feasts were held in courtyards, fields, and halls, where all could gather regardless of rank. Eating and drinking together became part of the ritual of inversion. For a day, the ordinary order of scarcity and division was replaced by abundance and equality. It was not just a physical release, but a nourishment of the spirit. Yet the escape offered by the Festival of Fools was not without limits. It existed within boundaries set by tradition, faith, and the church. It was granted for a day, and no more. Beyond its limits, life returned to its ordinary order, to duty, hierarchy, and discipline. This temporary nature was part of what made it powerful. It was a reminder that freedom is precious precisely because it is not constant. The laughter of the festival was all the more sweet for being fleeting. For many, the festival became a memory to carry through the year, a story told beside fires, in taverns, and in homes. The laughter of that day became part of the fabric of life, a quiet echo that lingered in the heart. It reminded people that even in the weight of obligation, there was room for joy. It was a lesson passed down from generation to generation, a ritual not written in books but kept alive in memory and tradition. The people's escape was also a statement. It was a way for ordinary people to claim a moment of agency, however brief, within a world that offered little choice. Through laughter, parody, and disguise, they created a space for themselves, a moment of equality, creativity, and delight. It was not a rebellion that lasted, but it was a rebellion that mattered. As you listen now, imagine yourself there. Standing in the middle of a cobblestone square, the air alive with music and laughter. Around you, peasants and nobles mingle without regard for rank. Fools dance with priests. Children chase donkeys through the crowd. The scent of bread and roast meat drifts through the air, mingled with the sound of drums and bells. For a moment, the world is not what it normally is. For a moment, it belongs to everyone. This is the gift of the Festival of Fools, a day of shared joy, a day of laughter, a day when life becomes something richer, fuller, and more alive. It is a moment when the ordinary rules of existence can be set aside, and the human spirit can breathe free. In the chapters ahead, we will look at the rituals that gave the Festival of Fools its shape, the ceremonies, the disguises, the music, and the laughter that made it a living tradition. We will discover how these moments of reversal carried deeper meanings, and how they transformed the lives of those who took part. The story of the Festival of Fools continues, and it is a story of humanity at its most alive. The Festival of Fools was not a random outburst of laughter. It was shaped by ritual, tradition, and an unspoken logic that gave meaning to the chaos. Behind the seeming disorder lay a careful choreography, a set of customs, ceremonies, and symbols that gave the day its structure. These rituals were the heart of the festival, transforming it from a mere carnival into a living celebration of inversion and joy. At the center of the festival stood the election of the Lord of Misrule. This was no ordinary role. The Lord of Misrule was chosen by the people, often a low-ranking member of the clergy or a clever boy from the choir. Clothed in mock regalia, crowned with a cap of fools, and given the title of authority, He became the symbolic ruler of the day. His authority was absurd, yet profound, a reminder that the world could be reversed, that the ordinary order of things could be playfully questioned. The Lord of Misrule presided over the day's ceremonies, leading processions through the streets and directing mock services in the cathedral. His role was not only comedic but deeply symbolic. By taking the place of the bishop or the priest, he embodied the idea that all authority is conditional. For one day, the low could speak as the high, and the fool could teach wisdom. The ritual was both parody and prayer, laughter and reflection intertwined. Another defining ritual of the festival was the parody of sacred ceremonies. The cathedral, a place of solemn worship, became a stage for absurd enactments. Hymns were sung backwards, prayers were recited in jest, and processions followed comic scripts. Clerics and choir bars swapped roles, and sacred vestments were worn with exaggerated flourish. Even the liturgy itself became a performance, blending mockery with reverence in a way that was at once unsettling and beautiful. One of the most curious rituals was the blessing of the donkey. In some towns, a donkey, a humble and stubborn creature, was led into the cathedral and given a mock blessing. The symbolism was rich. The donkey represented humility, foolishness, and the reversal of pride. It was a living embodiment of the festival spirit. The act was absurd, yet deeply poetic, a reminder that the divine could be found in laughter as much as in solemn prayer. Processions were a central feature of the day. Town squares and narrow streets became stages for a moving theater of inversion. Costumed fools, mock clergy, jesters, and townsfolk wound their way through the city, accompanied by music and song. The disguises themselves were part of the ritual. Masks allowed participants to step outside their daily identities, transforming them into something both other and eternal. In the laughter that accompanied these processions lay a collective release, a shared letting go of the ordinary world. Music and dance played a vital role in the rituals. The streets rang with the sound of drums, flutes, and horns. Songs, some bawdy, some sacredly inverted, were performed with joyful abandon. Dance became a ritual in itself, a way of embodying the spirit of the day. People moved together in spontaneous celebration, their laughter and music merging into a single, living expression of the festival's heart. Feasts and shared meals were also part of the ritual fabric. Food was abundant, laughter was abundant, and the act of eating together became a sacrament of inversion. Markets overflowed with pies, cakes, and spiced wine. Banquets were held in halls and courtyards where rank was forgotten, and abundance replaced scarcity. The shared table became a symbol of unity, breaking down the boundaries of rank, wealth, and station. The disguises themselves became a ritual language. Masks, robes, and costumes were not simply for humor, they were symbolic acts of transformation. They allowed people to inhabit roles beyond their own, to step into the roles of fools, kings, bishops, or beggars. In doing so, they enacted the central truth of the festival, that life is a performance, and that the roles we play are not fixed. For a day, the world became a stage, and all were actors in a grand ceremony of reversal. These rituals were not mere chaos, they were carefully contained acts of meaning. The festival had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It opened with the election of the Lord of Misrule, moved through processions, parody, feasts, and laughter, and closed with a return to order. This return was itself a ritual, a closing of the day's inversion, a reaffirmation of the normal order of life. The laughter faded, the masks were removed, and the world resumed its ordinary rhythm. Yet the rituals left their mark. They became stories told again and again, woven into the collective memory of communities. They became part of the identity of towns and villages, shaping their sense of tradition. And they carried forward a deeper truth, that ritual is not merely ceremony, but a form of shared transformation, a way of giving shape to joy, inversion, and the human need for release. For those who lived it, the Festival of Fools was more than a day of performance. It was a rite of passage into a world where the ordinary rules of life could be questioned. It was a lesson in humility, in laughter, in the power of reversal. It was a reminder that the world we know is only one version of reality, and that for a time, another world, a world of joy, equality, and shared humanity, is possible. As you listen now, Imagine the streets filled with color and sound. Picture the mock bishop leading his procession with exaggerated ceremony. Hear the laughter echoing through narrow lanes. See the masks and costumes transforming ordinary faces into something timeless and strange. Smell the scent of bread and roasted meat drifting through the air. Feel the rhythm of drums and song drawing the crowd together. These are the rituals that made the Festival of Fools not just an event, but a living tradition. In the next section, we will explore how this tradition evolved over time, how it spread, transformed, and eventually faded, leaving behind a legacy that still speaks to the human heart. The story of the Festival of Fools continues, and its rituals remain a testament to the enduring power of laughter, reversal, and shared celebration. The Festival of Fools, with its vivid pageantry and joyful chaos, was not a fixed tradition. Like all living customs, it changed over time, adapting to the shifting rhythms of medieval life. Its story is one of evolution, of transformation, adaptation, and diffusion across centuries and cultures. From its origins in small villages to its flowering in great cities, the festival became a mirror of the societies that embraced it. In the early days, the Festival of Fools began as local customs of misrule, small celebrations tied to particular feast days or harvest festivals. These events were often informal, rooted in the rhythms of rural life. Villagers might gather after the harvest to play tricks, enact parodies, and reverse roles for a day. Such moments of release were deeply human, arising naturally from the need to celebrate, to laugh, and to release the tensions of everyday toil. Over time, these local practices coalesced into a more formalized tradition. By the late Middle Ages, the Festival of Fools had taken shape as a recognizable ceremony, celebrated in towns and cities across Europe. Paris became one of its great centers, with celebrations reaching extraordinary scale and complexity. In the Cathedral of Notre Dame, the election of the Lord of Misrule became a ritual spectacle, drawing crowds from across the city. The streets of Paris filled with costumed revelers, music, and laughter. This grander form of the festival was both a continuation of older traditions and an evolution of them, shaped by the city's culture and the influence of the Church. The festival spread beyond France. In England, it was celebrated in towns such as York and Coventry, blending with local customs and creating new variations. In Spain, Germany, and the Low Countries, it took on different forms, each adapted to the traditions of its region. In some places, the emphasis was on elaborate processions and mock trials, in others, on theatrical performances and feasts. The heart of the festival remained the same, a reversal of order, a day of laughter, and a suspension of normal life, but its expression was shaped by local culture. As it spread, the festival evolved in meaning. In some regions, it became a way of reinforcing community bonds. In others, it became a form of protest, a subtle commentary on authority and hierarchy. In still others, it became a theater of the sacred, blending parody with devotion in a way that blurred the line between religion and performance. This adaptability was part of the festival's strength. It was not a rigid tradition imposed from above, but a living custom shaped by the people who practiced it. The evolution of the festival was also shaped by the changing world of the Middle Ages. The rise of towns and cities, the growth of commerce, and the spread of literacy all influenced how the festival was celebrated. In urban centers, it became a larger, more theatrical event, drawing participants from across the city. In rural areas, it remained a more intimate affair, rooted in local custom and memory. Yet whether grand or small, the festival preserved its spirit of joyous inversion. One of the most fascinating aspects of its evolution was how the rituals themselves adapted. The election of the Lord of Misrule took on new forms, incorporating local traditions and humor. Processions became more elaborate, with intricate costumes, masks, and music. Mock ceremonies gained theatrical flourish, becoming spectacles that drew crowds and created lasting memories. The blessing of the donkey, once a simple act, became a celebrated ritual in some places, rich in symbolism and pageantry. As the festival spread, it also encountered opposition. Reform movements within the church occasionally condemned it as irreverence or sacrilege. Critics warned that such parody undermined the solemnity of worship and the authority of the clergy. These tensions shaped the festival's evolution, sometimes leading to its suppression, other times to its transformation. In certain regions, the festival faded or was absorbed into other forms of celebration. In others, it persisted, adapting once again to changing conditions. By the end of the Middle Ages, the Festival of Fools had become both a cultural memory and a living tradition. Its influence could be seen in other festivals, carnivals, and theatrical forms that followed. It left traces in art, literature, and popular culture, carrying forward the spirit of inversion, parody, and communal joy. Even as its formal observance declined, the echoes of its laughter continued to shape the world of celebration. The spread and evolution of the festival reveal something profound about the nature of tradition. Traditions are not fixed, they live and breathe, shaped by the people who practice them. The Festival of Fools survived because it was flexible, because it met a deep human need for release, equality, and joy. It adapted to the cultures it touched, becoming something new in every place while preserving its heart. As you listen now, imagine the festival traveling through time and place. Picture it beginning in a small village, with peasants laughing after harvest. See it growing into a grand procession through the streets of Paris, led by a lord of misrule in robes of folly. Imagine it appearing in distant towns, transformed by local custom, each one adding its own color, sound, and meaning. Feel the living rhythm of tradition, shaped by laughter, memory, and human need. The story of the Festival of Fools is a story of transformation, of how a simple act of inversion can grow into a living tradition that crosses centuries and cultures. It is a reminder that joy is not fixed, that laughter can travel, and that the human spirit is capable of creating meaning in many forms. In the next section, we will look more closely at the deeper meaning of this strange celebration, what it tells us about the human condition, about the nature of order and chaos, and about the timeless need for moments of reversal and release. The story of the Festival of Fools continues, and its meaning grows richer with every telling. The laughter, chaos, and parody of the Festival of Fools were not mere frivolities. Beneath the masks and music lay a deeper meaning, a symbolic language of inversion, humility, and reflection. To truly understand the festival, we must look beyond the spectacle and ask, why did people need such a ritual? Why was reversal given a sacred place within the rhythm of medieval life? The answer lies in the human heart, in our relationship to order, authority, and joy. At its core, the festival was an expression of paradox, the idea that order itself requires moments of disorder. The normal life of the medieval world was defined by structure, prayer, labor, hierarchy, and ritual. These were not arbitrary rules, but a framework for existence. Yet, just as a day of rest is needed within a week of work, so too was a day of reversal needed within a life of order. The Festival of Fools became that day, a ritualized break in the ordinary, a deliberate turning of the world upside down. This inversion carried profound symbolic meaning. It was not merely misrule for amusement, but a ritual that reflected on the nature of power itself. By electing a lord of misrule, the people enacted a form of temporary democracy, a moment in which authority could be questioned and reimagined. For one day, the low became high, the fool became teacher, and the sacred became profane. This reversal was a powerful reminder that human structures of power are not absolute. They are fragile, changeable, and, at their heart, human creations. The festival was also a ritual of humility. By mocking authority and parodying sacred ceremonies, participants acknowledged their own imperfection. In laughter, there was an admission that no human order is flawless, no belief beyond question. This humility was not subversive for its own sake, but a way of deepening faith and community. The laughter became a kind of prayer, a shared recognition of human limitation and the need for grace. Another meaning of the festival lay in its communal nature. Life in the Middle Ages was defined by hierarchy and separation. Peasant and lord, cleric and layman, rarely shared space as equals. The Festival of Fools dissolved those divisions, even if only for a day. It was a moment of equality, where masks and costumes erased rank, and laughter became the language of communion. This was not a trivial matter, it was a profound experience of unity. In the shared absurdity of the festival, people encountered one another in a way that transcended the normal order of life. The laughter itself was a form of release. In medieval life, Where hardship was constant and survival demanded discipline, joy was rare and precious. The festival created a space where joy could be lived openly, without shame or restraint. This joy was not chaos without meaning, it was a ritual of renewal, a way of sustaining the human spirit. By granting permission to laugh, to invert, to play, the festival gave people something essential, a moment to reconnect with life's vitality. The symbolic acts of the festival, the blessing of the donkey, the election of the Lord of Misrule, the parodies of the liturgy, were not merely for spectacle. They were acts of meaning, woven into a larger ritual that spoke of life, mortality, and the limits of human control. The donkey, humble and stubborn, became a symbol of humility. The Lord of Misrule embodied the truth that all authority is conditional. The parodied liturgies reminded participants that even the most solemn acts of worship could be approached with both reverence and joy. The deeper meaning of the festival also lay in its temporality. Its inversion of order was granted for a single day, and then life returned to normal. This limited nature gave it power. Freedom that is permanent loses its intensity. But a day of license, framed by ritual and tradition, becomes sacred precisely because it is fleeting. The festival was a reminder that joy, reversal, and release are precious, and that they must be chosen again and again. This meaning was carried in memory long after the festival ended. For those who took part, it was not simply an event to attend, but an experience to carry. The laughter lingered, becoming part of the shared story of community. It became a reminder that life, with all its order and obligation, also needs moments of play, of inversion, of release. The festival became a living lesson in the balance of life, that order without joy is barren, and that joy without order is fleeting. The festival's deeper meaning can also be seen in its endurance. For centuries, it survived, adapted, and spread because it spoke to something essential in human nature. It was not imposed from above, but lived and shaped by the people who practiced it. It endured because it met a deep need, the need to laugh, to question, to invert, and to connect. It endured because it was not only a day of misrule but a ritual of humanity itself. As you listen now, imagine stepping into that deeper meaning. Imagine the laughter of 1,000 voices carrying not just joy but a quiet wisdom. Imagine the streets filled with masks, music, and color, not simply for spectacle, but as an offering of humility and communion. Feel the rhythm of the day, the way laughter became prayer, parody became ritual, and inversion became meaning. This is the heart of the Festival of Fools, not just a celebration, but a living expression of a deeper truth about life. The story of the Festival of Fools is not only a history of a peculiar medieval custom, but also a lesson for our own time. It reminds us that beneath the seriousness of life lies a need for reversal, for laughter, for communion. It teaches us that order is strengthened, not weakened, by moments of chaos, and that joy is a form of renewal. The festival stands as a timeless testament to the human need for ritualized release. In the next section, we will explore the decline of the Festival of Fools, why this tradition faded, and what its disappearance tells us about changes in society, faith, and the nature of joy. The story of the Festival of Fools continues, and even in its decline, its meaning endures. The Festival of Fools, with its laughter, masks, and joyous inversion of order, flourished for centuries. Yet by the late Middle Ages, its presence began to fade. Its decline was not sudden, but gradual, a slow unwinding shaped by changes in religion, politics, and society. To understand why this extraordinary tradition disappeared, we must look at the shifting world of the late medieval period, and the forces that reshaped both the church and the communities it served. One factor in the festival's decline was the changing role of the church. By the 15th century, the church faced growing calls for reform. Critics accused it of corruption, and reform movements demanded a return to purity and solemnity in worship. In this climate, the playful inversion of the Festival of Fools came under scrutiny. To some reformers, the festival appeared frivolous at best, and at worst a dangerous mockery of sacred rites. They argued that such parody undermined the dignity of faith and distracted from true devotion. This criticism, voiced within and outside the church, began to erode support for the festival. Alongside religious reform, political change played a part. The rise of centralized states and stronger secular authority altered the social landscape. In earlier centuries, the festival had been tolerated as a community ritual, a contained release allowed by tradition. But as power became more concentrated in monarchies and state institutions, the space for such communal license narrowed. Public life became more regulated, and festivals that seemed to challenge order came under suspicion. The humor of the Festival of Fools was increasingly seen not as harmless play, but as a potential threat to authority. The festival also faced a cultural transformation. As cities grew, life became more complex. New forms of entertainment emerged: theater, pageantry, fairs, and secular festivals. These offered laughter and spectacle without the same inversion of sacred order. In this changing cultural environment, the Festival of Fools lost some of its uniqueness. Its rituals, once a central moment in the year, were absorbed into other forms of festivity or quietly fell away. What had once been a living tradition became a memory. Criticism from within the church accelerated this process. By the late medieval period, certain councils and bishops moved to suppress the festival. The argument was not only theological but moral. To them, the parody of sacred rites crossed the line into sacrilege. The laughter that had once been seen as a communal prayer now risked being judged irreverence. In towns and cities across Europe, orders were given to limit or ban the festival. These decrees, combined with wider changes in society, sealed its gradual disappearance. Yet decline did not mean total erasure. Even as the formal festival faded, its spirit lingered in other forms. In some towns, echoes of the Festival of Fools survived in smaller parades, masquerades, and carnival traditions. The idea of inversion, of laughter, disguise, and release, lived on in other celebrations, whether in masked balls, street theater, or seasonal carnivals. The essence of the festival persisted, even if its formal rituals were lost. The decline also reflects a deeper transformation in the relationship between authority and festivity. The medieval world allowed moments of sanctioned misrule as part of its rhythm of life. By the Renaissance and Reformation, those rhythms changed. Order became stricter, worship more regulated, and public life less tolerant of ritual inversion. The space for the Festival of Fools shrank. What remained were echoes, traces of laughter that survived in art, literature, and folklore, rather than in living ritual. This decline was not only a loss of a tradition, but a change in the way society experienced joy and release. The Festival of Fools had been a shared moment of equality, a communal suspension of order. With its disappearance, those moments became rarer. Laughter became more private, more contained. The collective inversion, the shared release of the festival, was replaced by other, less communal forms of amusement. The world grew quieter in that sense, even as it grew richer in other kinds of entertainment. Yet the memory of the festival remained vivid. Chroniclers, poets, and artists recorded its pageantry, its laughter, and its rituals. These records preserved the spirit of a tradition that had once brought communities together in joy and reversal. They kept alive the sense that beneath the seriousness of life lies a need for release, that laughter and inversion have their own place in the human story. The Festival of Fools became part of cultural memory, a symbol of a way of life that no longer existed. The decline of the festival can be seen as part of a larger story, the story of how tradition adapts and disappears. Traditions live as long as they meet a need in the culture that sustains them. The Festival of Fools survived for centuries because it fulfilled a deep human need for release, equality, and laughter. When the world changed, and those needs were expressed differently, the festival faded. But its meaning, the meaning of laughter, reversal, and communal joy, endures. As you listen now, imagine the last great Festival of Fools in its full splendor. Picture the streets alive with music and laughter, masks and mockery. Hear the voice of the Lord of Misrule calling forth joy and chaos. See the crowds, laughing together, embodying a ritual older than themselves. And then imagine the festival ending, the laughter fading, the masks removed, the world returning to its ordinary order. This is the quiet moment of the festival's decline, the end of a tradition that once brought joy to countless lives. The story of the Festival of Fools is not simply the story of a medieval custom. It is a story about the human need for release, the value of ritual, and the power of laughter. Its decline reminds us that traditions are fragile, and that joy is something we must choose to preserve. Even in its fading, the festival leaves a legacy, a reminder that life requires not only order but moments of inversion, that the human heart needs both discipline and delight. In the next section, we will explore the legacy of the Festival of Fools, how its spirit lives on in the traditions and celebrations of our own time. We will look at how laughter, parody, and ritual inversion continue to shape human culture, even centuries after the festival itself disappeared. The story of the Festival of Fools continues, and its echoes still speak to the human heart. Even though the Festival of Fools gradually disappeared from the streets and squares of Europe, its legacy continued to live on, not as a fixed tradition, but as a thread woven into the fabric of culture, art, and human memory. Its spirit, rooted in laughter, parody, reversal, and communal joy, transcended centuries. Today, we can still find echoes of this remarkable medieval custom in festivals, theatre, literature, and art around the world. To explore its legacy is to understand how a tradition, even when lost, can continue to shape the human imagination. One of the clearest legacies of the Festival of Fools is the modern carnival. In cities like Venice, Rio de Janeiro, and New Orleans, carnival celebrations echo the spirit of medieval misrule. Masks, costumes, music, parades, and a suspension of ordinary order are central to these events. Just as in the medieval festival, carnival becomes a time when social hierarchies are softened, when laughter and spectacle create a shared space of joy. The carnival is the living descendant of the Festival of Fools, transformed by centuries, but carrying its essence of inversion and collective celebration. Theatrical traditions also owe a debt to the festival. Comedy, parody, and satire, central elements of the Festival of Fools, became foundational to the development of theatre. Medieval theatre often drew directly from the language of the festival, blending humor with moral lesson, spectacle with reflection. Over time, this evolved into forms such as commedia dell'arte, farce, and masque. These theatrical forms preserve the playful spirit of the festival, a spirit that treats laughter as a form of truth and performance as a way of questioning the ordinary. Literature, too, keeps the memory alive. Writers from Chaucer to Shakespeare, from Rabelais to Cervantes, drew inspiration from the language and philosophy of inversion found in the festival. The use of fools, jesters, parody, and role reversal became literary devices that carried the same deeper meaning as the festival itself, a reflection on human folly, humility, and the limits of authority. In these works, the laughter of the Festival of Fools survives in prose and poetry, continuing to speak to readers across centuries. Art also preserves its influence. Paintings, illuminated manuscripts, and woodcuts of the late medieval period often depict scenes from the festival, processions, mock ceremonies, masked figures, and the Lord of Misrule. These visual records keep alive not only the memory of the event but its spirit, a world turned upside down, a space where joy and parody are sacred. Through art, the laughter of the festival transcends its time, becoming part of a shared cultural heritage. The legacy of the Festival of Fools is not limited to art and celebration. It also survives as a living idea, the idea that laughter, parody, and reversal have their place in human life. This idea is present in humor traditions around the world, in satire that questions authority, and in rituals that allow communities to invert order. Comedy clubs, street festivals, and political satire all carry forward the same impulse, to use laughter as a form of release, connection, and reflection. Even in modern life, we can sense the echo of the festival in moments of shared joy and playful inversion. Consider April Fool's Day, with its tradition of harmless pranks and role reversals. Consider the laughter at a masked ball, or the communal joy of a street parade. These contemporary practices may not be direct continuations of the medieval festival, but they share its heart, a ritualized suspension of ordinary life, a collective moment of joy and reflection. The legacy of the Festival of Fools is also a reminder of the power of tradition to survive in memory, even when the form itself changes. Traditions live not only in practice, but in story, art, and imagination. The festival, though it disappeared as a formal event, remains alive in the way we think about joy, reversal, and the role of laughter in life. It is preserved in the way communities still seek moments of release, in the humor that questions authority, and in the celebrations that invert order. This legacy is also a reminder that laughter is not trivial. In the medieval festival, laughter was a ritual, a language, and a form of communion. It was a shared act of meaning, grounded in humility and inversion. Today, laughter continues to serve these purposes, even if we no longer call it by the name of the Festival of Fools. Its essence survives whenever we gather to laugh together, to question the ordinary, and to imagine another way of living. The festival's influence on culture is a testament to the resilience of human creativity. Traditions may fade, but their spirit can find new expression. The laughter of the Festival of Fools, a laughter that once rang through medieval streets, continues to shape art, performance, and celebration. It reminds us that joy, humor, and ritual inversion are not mere entertainments, but essential parts of the human experience. As you listen now, imagine the echo of the festival across centuries. Picture a Venetian carnival, a street theater, a literary fool, or a painter's depiction of a medieval procession. Hear the laughter that once filled town squares, now carried forward in art, celebration, and memory. Feel the invisible thread that connects us to a tradition of joy and inversion, even though the original festival is gone. This is the enduring legacy of the Festival of Fools, a reminder that laughter, disguise, and reversal are timeless human needs. The story of the Festival of Fools does not end with its disappearance from the streets of Europe. Its spirit continues to live in the way humanity creates meaning through joy, parody, and reversal. Its legacy teaches us that traditions matter not only for what they are, but for what they leave behind, the ideas, the rituals, and the laughter that shape the human heart. In the next section, we will explore what the Festival of Fools teaches us for the present day, how its meaning can inspire our lives now, and how its spirit of laughter and reversal can be preserved in the modern world. The story of the Festival of Fools continues, and its legacy offers a timeless gift to those willing to listen. Although the Festival of Fools belongs to a time long past, its meaning still speaks to us today. Beneath its masks, music, and laughter lay lessons that are as relevant now as they were in the streets of medieval Europe. In a world filled with seriousness, division, and constant demands for order, the spirit of the festival offers a gentle reminder: life requires moments of reversal, play, and shared joy. Its teachings extend beyond history into the very way we live, laugh, and connect with one another. The first lesson is that laughter matters. In the medieval festival, laughter was not frivolous, it was essential. It was a way to release tension, to challenge authority gently, and to restore balance. Today, laughter continues to hold transformative power. It dissolves tension, builds connection, and opens the door to empathy. In a world where seriousness often dominates public life, the festival teaches us to reclaim laughter as a vital part of existence, not as escape, but as nourishment for the soul. The festival also teaches us about humility. The act of inversion, placing the low above the high, the fool above the king, reminds us that no one is beyond questioning. In modern life, where hierarchies are often rigid and authority can be absolute, this lesson remains vital. The spirit of the Festival of Fools encourages us to challenge authority with respect, to question our assumptions, and to remember that all human orders are conditional. It invites us to see the world with both seriousness and playfulness. Another teaching of the festival is the value of communal joy. The festival was not simply about individual laughter, it was a shared celebration. People came together to laugh, to play, and to create something beyond themselves. Today, this communal spirit can be seen in celebrations, festivals, and gatherings where people step outside their ordinary lives. It reminds us that joy is multiplied when shared, that laughter becomes richer when it is part of a community. The festival teaches us that connection through play is a deeply human need. The festival also speaks to the power of ritual. In our modern lives, rituals can feel formal or outdated, yet they have a profound role in shaping experience. The Festival of Fools was a ritual of inversion, a deliberate suspension of the ordinary to create space for renewal. Today, we can reclaim this idea by creating our own rituals of release. Whether it is a yearly celebration, a shared joke, or a moment of intentional play, Ritual gives depth to joy and creates meaning in the ordinary flow of life. The spirit of the Festival of Fools also teaches us the value of perspective. By turning the world upside down for a day, the festival encouraged people to see life differently. It invited them to question their assumptions, laugh at themselves, and recognize the limits of their own authority. In our world today, where certainty is often prized above curiosity, this lesson is profoundly important. The festival reminds us to look at life from multiple angles, to embrace paradox, and to find wisdom in play. The festival's legacy teaches us about resilience. Despite its decline, its spirit has lived on in carnival, theater, satire, literature, and art. This endurance shows that joy, humor, and inversion are not bound by time. They adapt, they survive, and they reappear in forms we might not expect. The Festival of Fools teaches us that traditions matter not only in their form, but in the ideas they carry, and those ideas can live on even when the festival itself is gone. In a deeper sense, the festival teaches us about the human need for balance. Life demands order, structure, and discipline, but it also requires moments of chaos, laughter, and reversal. The Festival of Fools embodied this balance, giving people one day in the year to step outside their ordinary roles and embrace a world turned upside down. Its teaching is simple yet profound. Joy is not the absence of order, but the careful balance of order and release. The festival also invites us to remember the value of humility in joy. Joy without humility can slip into arrogance, but joy grounded in humility becomes a form of grace. The laughter of the Festival of Fools was rooted in an understanding of human imperfection. It invited participants to laugh at themselves as much as at the world. In today's life, where pride and division often overshadow humility, this teaching is deeply relevant. It reminds us that laughter is most powerful when shared with openness and compassion. The festival's lessons also extend to creativity. Its rituals, masks, and parodies were acts of imagination. They transformed the ordinary into something extraordinary. Today, we can take inspiration from this creativity in our own lives. We can find ways to turn everyday moments into acts of play, to reframe challenges with humor, and to create spaces for shared joy. The festival teaches us that creativity thrives in the space between order and chaos, and that joy can be found in acts of imaginative transformation. The deeper teaching of the festival is that life itself is a kind of performance. The roles we play, whether as parent, friend, worker, or citizen, are shaped by custom and circumstance. The Festival of Fools showed that for a time, those roles could be reversed. This is a profound lesson for today. The roles we inhabit are not fixed. We can choose to step outside them, to see life differently, and to create new possibilities for connection and joy. As you listen now, imagine carrying forward the spirit of the Festival of Fools into your own life. Imagine moments where you set aside seriousness, don a metaphorical mask, and embrace joy with humility. Picture laughter becoming a ritual, connection becoming an art, and reversal becoming a way to see the world anew. This is the gift of the Festival of Fools, not just a memory from history, but a living teaching for today. The story of the Festival of Fools is not just a tale from the past, it is a guide for the present. Its meaning teaches us that laughter matters, that humility matters, and that joy is a shared act of renewal. Its spirit invites us to create moments of reversal in our own lives, moments where we step outside the ordinary, laugh together, and glimpse a world turned upside down. In the next section, we will bring this story to a close, reflecting on the timeless power of the Festival of Fools and the way its laughter continues to echo through history. The story of the Festival of Fools continues, not only in memory, but in the laughter we choose to preserve. The story of the Festival of Fools is a story that begins in the streets of medieval Europe but extends far beyond. It is a story of laughter, reversal, and ritual that speaks to something deeply human, a desire to step outside the ordinary, to laugh together, and to find meaning through joy. As we have journeyed through its history, evolution, decline, and legacy, we have seen that the festival was more than a celebration. It was a living lesson, a reflection of human need, and a testament to the power of tradition. The Festival of Fools reminds us that life is richer when it allows space for inversion. In a world that values order, structure, and discipline, the festival offered something different, a deliberate turning upside down. This inversion was not chaos for chaos's sake, but a ritual that held deeper meaning. It was a reminder that life is not only about seriousness and authority, but also about laughter, humility, and the courage to see things differently. The power of the festival lay in its ability to transform ordinary life. For a single day each year, communities stepped out of their roles. Lords became fools, the sacred became playful, the everyday became extraordinary. This transformation was an act of collective imagination, a shared creation that united communities in joy and reflection. In this way, the Festival of Fools was more than entertainment, it was an act of living art, a moment of ritual beauty that carried meaning far beyond the laughter it produced. Its decline reminds us that traditions are fragile. They survive only when they continue to meet the needs of the people who hold them. Yet even in disappearance, the festival left a lasting imprint. Its spirit lives on in carnival, theater, literature, satire, and even everyday humor. It lives on in the simple act of laughter, in the shared joy of a playful moment, and in the human capacity to imagine life differently. This endurance is a testament to the strength of what the festival embodied, the human need for joy, inversion, and ritual. The festival's legacy teaches us that laughter is not trivial. It is a profound form of human connection. In its laughter, the Festival of Fools offered humility, equality, and reflection. It reminded people that joy could be a form of communion, a shared moment of meaning. Today, this teaching is more relevant than ever. In a world that is often divided, where seriousness can overshadow play, and where authority can feel fixed, the spirit of the festival offers a gentle but powerful reminder: laughter matters, and joy is a vital part of human life. The Festival of Fools also teaches us that tradition is living. Traditions are not fixed monuments but living rivers, flowing through time, changing course, and carrying meaning in new ways. The medieval festival may no longer be celebrated in the same way, but its essence endures wherever we create moments of play, reversal, and communal joy. This living legacy is a gift, a reminder that we have the power to invent rituals that nourish our lives and the lives of those around us. There is a deeper truth in the festival's legacy, that joy and inversion are not opposites of order, but complements to it. Order without joy can become rigidity, and joy without order can become fleeting. The Festival of Fools embodied the balance between these forces. Its ritualized inversion offered a controlled space for release, a way to refresh the order of life. This is a teaching that reaches beyond the Middle Ages. It invites us to ask how we might bring moments of joyful inversion into our own lives, and how such moments might transform the ordinary into something extraordinary. The festival also leaves us with a vision of humility as a form of strength. The laughter of the Festival of Fools was rooted in the recognition of human imperfection. It was an act of collective humility, a shared acknowledgement that no human order is absolute. In a modern world often driven by certainty and authority, this lesson feels both ancient and urgent. It invites us to approach life with a balance of seriousness and playfulness, humility and joy. The lasting power of the Festival of Fools lies in its universality. Across time and place, human beings have sought moments of reversal and release. Whether in a carnival, a masquerade, a satirical play, or a shared joke, we continue to reach for what the festival once offered. Its legacy reminds us that these moments matter, that they are part of what makes us human. To laugh together, to invert roles, and to create shared moments of joy is to touch something timeless. As you listen now, imagine the festival once more, in all its vivid color and sound. Imagine the streets filled with laughter, music, and masquerade. Imagine the turning of the world upside down, if only for a day. Feel the unity it created, the humility it embodied, and the joy it gave to those who took part. This is not just a memory of the past, but an invitation for the present. The laughter of the Festival of Fools still calls to us, a call to remember that joy is a gift, and reversal a path to deeper understanding. The festival leaves us with a final truth, that joy, humor, and ritual inversion are not relics of history, but living parts of the human spirit. They endure because they meet a need that is timeless. In our own lives, we can carry forward the spirit of the Festival of Fools by creating moments of joy, by questioning the ordinary, and by embracing the power of shared laughter. This is the true legacy of the festival, a timeless teaching that continues to speak to us across centuries. The story of the Festival of Fools comes to a close not with an ending, but with a continuation. Its laughter continues to echo in the traditions we keep, the celebrations we create, and the joy we choose to share. It remains a reminder that life needs both order and inversion, discipline and delight, seriousness and play. The Festival of Fools teaches us that joy is not an accident, but a choice to step outside the ordinary, to laugh together, and to embrace the world in all its paradox. In this gentle conclusion, let the laughter linger. Let it remind you that beneath the seriousness of life lies the need for release, for reversal, and for shared joy. The Festival of Fools offers us not only a glimpse into a forgotten past, but a vision for how we might live today. Its timeless power lies in its ability to remind us of what is essential, the gift of laughter, the value of humility, and the enduring need for moments of inversion in the human story. The spirit of the Festival of Fools lives on not only in history books, but in the way human beings continue to seek moments of inversion and shared joy. Though the festival itself belongs to a distant past, its deeper meaning still resonates in modern life. We see it in carnivals that transform cities into vibrant worlds of masks and laughter, in theater that uses parody to challenge authority, and even in everyday humor that turns seriousness on its head. The lesson is clear: the impulse to reverse order, to laugh together, and to step outside the ordinary is a living part of human culture. In many modern celebrations, we find echoes of the medieval festival spirit. Venice's carnival, for example, transforms the city into a place of disguise, music, and role reversal. Participants don elaborate masks, shedding their ordinary identities to join in a collective experience of joy. In Rio de Janeiro, carnival becomes an explosion of color, rhythm, and spectacle, breaking daily life with its own kind of organized chaos. These events, though shaped by centuries of change, carry forward the essential heart of the Festival of Fools, a ritualized inversion that brings people together. Theater, too, carries forward the legacy. Satire, parody, and comedy remain powerful tools for reflection and critique. Comedians, playwrights, and performers still use humor to question authority, highlight absurdities, and invite audiences to see the world differently. In a sense, every joke, every playful twist of narrative is an echo of the medieval custom, a reminder that laughter can be both a form of joy and a means of deeper reflection. Beyond festivals and performance, the spirit of inversion appears in the everyday. April Fool's Day, for example, is a modern day dedicated to harmless pranks and playful role reversal. Workplace traditions, masquerade parties, and even playful family rituals reflect the same impulse that gave birth to the Festival of Fools, the desire to step outside the ordinary, to turn life upside down, and to share laughter. These acts may be small, but they carry the same essential meaning, an invitation to question order, to embrace humility, and to find joy in the unexpected. In a broader sense, the modern world continues to echo the festival's deeper lesson, that life benefits from moments of reversal. In a culture often dominated by seriousness and routine, moments of playful inversion provide a vital release. They remind us that the roles we inhabit are not fixed, that order itself can be questioned, and that joy is a communal gift. This is why the spirit of the Festival of Fools remains alive, because it speaks to a timeless need in the human heart. Even in our personal lives, we can carry this spirit forward. To laugh at ourselves, to question our assumptions, and to embrace moments of reversal is to keep alive the festival's meaning. It can be as simple as sharing a joke, engaging in playful traditions with friends and family, or choosing to see the world through a lens of curiosity and humor. These acts, small as they may seem, are part of a living tradition that connects us to the laughter of centuries past. The Festival of Fools teaches us that joy and inversion are not opposites of order, but part of the balance of life. Modern life, with all its complexity and speed, can feel rigid and serious. The spirit of the festival offers a gentle counterpoint, a reminder that life needs moments where rules are set aside, where laughter becomes ritual, and where the ordinary is transformed. These moments of playful inversion keep life fresh, human, and meaningful. As you listen now, Imagine carrying this spirit into your own life. Imagine a world where moments of reversal and joy are not rare, but woven into daily life. Imagine the laughter that could follow if we allowed ourselves more permission to invert order, to question seriousness, and to connect through play. This is the living legacy of the Festival of Fools, a gift not bound by time, but renewed every time we choose to laugh together and see the world anew. The story of the Festival of Fools comes to a gentle close, yet its meaning continues to linger. It is not simply the story of a vanished tradition, but the story of something far greater, the enduring human need for laughter, for reversal, and for shared joy. The festival reminds us that beneath the seriousness of life lies the desire to step outside our roles, to invert order, and to embrace moments of connection and delight. This is a timeless teaching, one that transcends centuries and speaks directly to the human spirit. To carry the laughter forward is to recognize the value of play in life. The Festival of Fools offered a yearly invitation to play, to set aside rank and routine, to enter a space where masks could be worn and roles reversed. Today, we can carry this invitation into our daily lives. Play need not be formal or organized. It can be as simple as sharing a laugh with a friend, allowing ourselves to embrace a different perspective, or finding joy in the unexpected. These small acts of inversion and joy are echoes of the festival's heart. The festival also teaches us about the importance of humility. Laughter grounded in humility becomes a way of connecting with others, a bridge across differences. The Lord of Misrule was not a symbol of chaos without purpose. He embodied the reminder that no one is beyond being questioned and no order is beyond being turned. This humility, paired with joy, is a powerful lesson for today's world. It invites us to approach life with openness, curiosity, and the willingness to see beyond the ordinary. The spirit of the Festival of Fools lives on in many forms, in art, in theater, in satire, and in shared celebration. But perhaps most importantly, it lives on in the choices we make. Every time we allow ourselves to laugh together, to turn the ordinary into something extraordinary, or to create a moment of shared joy, we keep the spirit of the festival alive. This is not a tradition bound by centuries, but a living choice that each of us can make. In a world that often values seriousness above play, the festival reminds us of balance. Order and structure are important, but so too is the ability to step outside them. The Festival of Fools was a ritual of inversion that created space for renewal. In our lives today, this ritual can take many forms: a celebration, a joke, a creative moment, or simply an intentional choice to see life differently. These moments of playful inversion keep life vibrant and human. The laughter of the festival also teaches us that joy is a shared act. It is not something that exists in isolation, but something that grows when it is experienced together. The communal laughter of the Festival of Fools bound people in a shared ritual, creating a connection that transcended social divisions. Today, we can carry forward this teaching by seeking moments of collective joy, in festivals, gatherings, performances, or even simple acts of play with those around us. These moments remind us that joy is not just an individual experience, but a gift to be shared. The legacy of the festival is also a reminder that traditions are living, evolving, and adaptable. The medieval Festival of Fools may no longer be celebrated in its original form, but its spirit lives on wherever joy, reversal, and laughter are part of human life. This is an invitation to create our own modern rituals, moments that honor play, humility, and connection. By doing so, we honor the deeper meaning of the festival, carrying its laughter forward into the present. As you listen now, imagine a world where the spirit of the Festival of Fools is alive in everyday life. Imagine people choosing to laugh together, to embrace moments of playful reversal, and to transform the ordinary into something extraordinary. Imagine a world where joy is not a rare occasion, but a woven part of daily life. This is the living gift of the Festival of Fools, a reminder that laughter is timeless, and that we have the power to keep it alive. The Festival of Fools teaches us that laughter is not a distraction from life, but a vital part of it. It reminds us that joy can be ritualized, that humility can be powerful, and that moments of inversion can refresh the human spirit. To carry the laughter forward is to choose to keep alive a tradition of connection, creativity, and play, a tradition that has survived centuries in spirit and continues to speak to the human heart. In closing, the Festival of Fools offers us a final, timeless gift, the reminder that life is richer when it allows space for laughter, humility, and joyful reversal. To listen to its story is to hear an echo of something eternal, a call to step outside the ordinary, to laugh together, and to carry forward the spirit of inversion into our own lives. The laughter of the Festival of Fools continues, and it is ours to preserve.